The Epstein thing is a distraction. From what's actually happening.
Wouldn't you want to hear right from the horse's mouth?
I think the president has much bigger issues to deal with.
We both don't think that somebody like that should be representing Americans. And so I guess my question to you would be, given the fact that Trump himself is named in the Epstein files 38,000 times, do you think he should at least testify in the same way that Bill and Hillary Clinton did? But how would you know if he doesn't testify?
Because you can read the documents, you can read the emails, and this.
You know that moment when someone thinks they've set the perfect trap and then it completely blows up in their face? Yeah, that's this clip. Brian Tyler Cohen walks into what's clearly supposed to be a gotcha setup from NewsNation host Katie Pavlich, and instead of getting boxed in, he flips it. Calmly, methodically. Look at the framing, the attempt to corner him, the confidence going in. And then, once the questions start getting redirected, the energy shifts. By the end of it, the entire conversation is somewhere she absolutely did not intend it to go. Watch the full exchange. I'll break it down properly afterward, because there's a lot happening beneath the surface here.
So why does it seem like blue states are putting criminals ahead of law-abiding citizens and putting people at risk? Joining me now is progressive YouTuber Brian Tyler Cohen. Brian, great to see you tonight. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
There is a pattern of the soft-on-crime policies in blue cities and states, putting career criminals ahead of citizens, and now we have deadly results. Do you think that they should be harsher on these types of criminals, or should they continue letting them out of prison?
If you're talking about criminals who commit violent crimes, undocumented immigrants or immigrants who commit violent crimes, should they be deported? Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that is a perfect example of when you and I are probably in full agreement that I want as harsh a penalty as you can get. If somebody commits a sexual crime, a crime against a child, or a violent crime, those are the people who shouldn't be here. But I think it's interesting that you highlighted a sex offender who's running for office. And I agree, I presume I agree, that we both don't think that somebody like that should be representing Americans. And so I guess my question to you would be, given the fact that Trump himself is named in the Epstein files 38,000 times, do you think he should at least testify in the same way that Bill and Hillary Clinton did?
There are multiple people who have testified already in these depositions who have said that the president is not implicated in any kind of crime. And even today,
wouldn't you want to hear from the guy? Wouldn't you want to hear right from the horse's mouth?
I think the president has much bigger issues to deal with. And even today, President Bill Clinton said that he believes the president.
Bigger issues than being implicated in a pedophile ring?
We started the show talking about the Epstein files. I think it's interesting that we're now diverting away from the facts on local Democrats letting criminals out of prison who are then going and murdering people at bus stops and on the train on the way home. But I want to get to this.
I think it's a pretty big issue when you have the sitting president of the and frankly, if the president was a Democrat and he was implicated in the biggest sex trafficking ring in the United States, in the history of this country,
I think the word implicated is pretty strong. And I
think how would you know? But how would you know if he doesn't testify?
Because you can read the documents, you can read the emails, and this isn't just about President Trump.
But we have 3 million documents that haven't been released.
Yes, you can. The Epstein thing is a distraction from what's actually happening, from this story that happened just today, where we have an illegal immigrant from West Africa.
You brought up the idea of a registered sex offender.
Yeah, registered convicted sex offender, not the president who was named in files with no evidence at all of criminal wrongdoing. Those are two very different things. But I want to get back to the news.
Transparency. Why wouldn't you want some transparency?
There's been plenty of transparency, which is why President Trump signed the legislation to put out the documents.
Do you support the James
president has much more important issues
in front of the?
Look, we're completely off base here talking about the Epstein files. I want to ask you this question about what happened in Fairfax County just tonight. We now know that this man was here illegally. He has 30 different arrests, criminal history for rape and malicious wounding. One of the first things that the new Democratic governor of Virginia did, Abigail Spanberger, was cut off cooperation with ICE to turn over violent criminals like this to the federal government so they can be deported. Do you believe that she should cooperate with ICE to get this guy out of the country and to prosecute him so that additional people are not harmed if he's released onto the streets?
I have no problem with ICE cooperating with state governments for violent criminals. I don't agree that states should be cooperating with ICE in instances where it doesn't involve violent criminals.
Even if they have 30 different arrests for rape and malicious wounding?
Well, that sounds like those sound like violent instances. So you have my answer on that. So I think we're in agreement there. I think if somebody is a violent criminal, then that's the instance where I think it would be acceptable to cooperate with ICE.
I want to ask you about this. There's new research by Vanderbilt University and Wellesley College saying that when Republican prosecutors are elected, the mortality among young men aged 20 to 29 falls by 6.6%. So do those numbers mean anything to you in terms of reducing crime and the approach that Democrats take to criminals versus Republicans?
No, I'm sorry. I don't really understand what that means.
It means that Republican candidates who are elected as prosecutors, they prosecute criminals and they keep them in prison, unlike in jail. Unlike Democrats, like in Fairfax County, for example, this prosecutor has let out a number of violent criminals back on the streets who then went on to reoffend or murder people. So the difference is that there are more living human beings in these communities as a result of putting violent criminals behind bars rather than releasing them into the community. Should Democrats take a harder stance on crime?
I think for violent criminals, there should be a harsh stance anyway. I'm fully in support of that. Look, I live in Los Angeles, but I mean, you can make blanket statements. It's
not a blanket statement. There's tons of data and examples.
We have in my city of Los Angeles, we had George Gascon, who was voted out in deference to Nathan Hochman, and so that's it. I mean, this is a true blue liberal bastion, and people here have spoken.
I'm glad we can agree on that. We look forward to having you back next time we're out of town. Brian Tyler Cohen, thank you so much for coming and debating me. I appreciate it. See you soon.
Thanks, Katie.
Look, at some point you have to just pause and admit what we all just watched. Every time Brian goes on that show, the dynamic is the same. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't spiral. He just stays steady, and the argument aimed at him collapses under its own weight. And you can feel it. That shift. That awkward recalibration when the talking points stop landing. And here's what really gets me. When you hear someone dismiss legitimate questions about accountability by saying, essentially, the president has more important things to deal with, what does that actually mean? Since when is transparency optional? Since when is scrutiny a distraction? We're talking about allegations tied to one of the most notorious criminal cases in modern American history. The bare minimum in a democracy is openness. Not deflection, not redirection. Openness. And this is the pattern we keep seeing. There's endless outrage when it's politically convenient, endless rhetoric about protecting communities, but when the spotlight swings toward someone powerful on their side, suddenly it's move along, nothing to see here. If accountability matters, it has to matter across the board. No carve-outs, no loyalty tests. If any public figure, Democrat, Republican, Independent, is credibly connected to wrongdoing, the answer isn't spin. It's investigation. It's transparency. It's evidence. That's the standard in a functioning democracy. And let's clear something up. Saying someone hasn't personally confessed to misconduct is not the same as clearing them. That's not how exoneration works. Exoneration requires full visibility, full release of relevant documents, independent review. Let the facts speak, all of them. Because here's the bigger picture. This isn't about scoring debate points. It's about whether we still believe institutions should apply rules evenly, whether powerful people should be shielded from scrutiny because it's politically uncomfortable, whether voters deserve the whole truth, not just the convenient portions. That's what's actually at stake. So I'll ask you this, if transparency is only demanded from one side, is that really accountability? Or is it just tribal defense dressed up as principle? This is why conversations like this matter. This is why we break these clips down here on Insider Information. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you believe the standard is being applied evenly? Or are people starting to see the double standard for what it is? If you value evidence-based discussion, democratic norms, and holding power accountable from anyone, make sure you subscribe to Insider Information and stay in this conversation. I'll see you in the next one.